In a quiet corner of the city, in an old apartment building with faded paint and creaking floors, lived a man who seemed ordinary to everyone around him. He moved through his days without drawing attention. Most people in the building hardly noticed him. He kept to himself, rarely spoke, and carried a calm, almost invisible presence. His apartment was small, neat, and filled with simple furniture. Nothing about it suggested wealth or extravagance. The neighbors assumed he lived a modest life. Like many others in the building, he would leave early in the morning and return late at night. Often, people saw him sitting by his window, staring quietly at the street below. Sometimes he would wave to the children playing outside or nod at the shopkeepers on the corner. His actions were small, gentle, and unassuming. No one knew that behind those quiet eyes was a mind observing every detail of the world around him. He liked routine. Every morning, he would wake before the sun, make himself a simple breakfast, and walk down the street to a nearby cafe. He never rushed, but he always seemed to be going somewhere with purpose. At the cafe, he would sit at the same table, sip his coffee slowly, and write in a worn leather notebook. People thought he might be a writer or someone who liked to journal. Occasionally, he would smile at the barista or share a polite greeting. But mostly he kept to himself. His presence was calm, almost soothing, yet it carried an air of mystery. The neighbors had grown used to him over the years. They whispered quietly about his strange habits. How he never owned a car, even though he could have easily bought one. How he always helped with small tasks, carrying heavy bags for an elderly neighbor or fixing a door that had stuck. They called him kind, maybe a little odd, but harmless. No one suspected the truth about him. What the neighbors didn't know was that he was watching them, not in a way that was frightening, but in a way that made him aware of the struggles and joys in their lives. He had installed small cameras and sensors in places that no one would notice, not to spy for selfish reasons, but to understand the community around him. He observed quietly, taking note of people who needed help, stores that were struggling, and children who might need support. Every detail mattered to him, and he used what he saw to think about ways he could quietly make a difference. He never interfered in anyone's life unless he saw a real need. He didn't want recognition, and he didn't want anyone to feel embarrassed. He believed that the small acts of kindness, done quietly, could create ripples in the world. A neighbor who had trouble paying rent might find an anonymous payment one month. A family struggling to buy groceries might find a note with money and a simple message. "We'll be okay." He never sought credit or thanks. Seeing the relief and happiness on people's faces was enough. Despite his quiet life, he had a strong sense of curiosity. He loved watching people, learning from them, and understanding the choices they made. He often thought about the challenges they faced and the courage it took to live their daily lives. Sometimes he would sit in the park, observing people from a distance, and wonder about their dreams and fears. He felt connected to them in a way that others might not understand, because he saw life from both a distance and up close at the same time. At night, when the city lights flickered and the streets quieted, he would return to his apartment. He liked to sit by the window and look at the skyline, thinking about the world beyond his little corner of a city. He read books, watched the news, and kept notes about ideas he had to help people in ways that were thoughtful and unobtrusive. He planned quietly, carefully, and with patience. Every decision he made was measured and intentional. Sometimes, neighbors would knock on his door for advice or help with small problems. He always welcomed them with a gentle smile, ready to offer a hand without judgment. He fixed broken furniture, gave advice on finances, or sometimes just listened when someone needed to talk. People appreciated him, even if they didn't fully understand him. They called him reliable, quiet, and kind-hearted, but they had no idea of the life he had built for himself beyond the walls of his modest apartment. He had everything he could ever want in terms of wealth, yet he chose simplicity. He didn't need a fancy car, a big house, or public recognition. To him, observing life, helping quietly, and living among ordinary people was more rewarding than any display of riches. He found satisfaction in the small moments, a child smiling, a neighbor relieved, a store owner succeeding. These things mattered more to him than the wealth he had accumulated. He had a purpose, though it wasn't obvious. Every day, he made small plans to make the world a little better for those around him. He thought about ways to support people without making them feel indebted. He wanted to give hope quietly, without fanfare. He knew that true kindness didn't need applause, and real impact didn't need recognition. This was the principle by which he lived his life. As the weeks and months passed, the quiet man continued his routine. He remained unnoticed by most, yet deeply involved in the lives of those around him in invisible ways. He was a silent observer, the helpful neighbor, the quiet protector. People saw the calm, ordinary man living a simple life, unaware of the extraordinary impact he was already making. Even the small gestures he made carried meaning. Sometimes he would leave a package of groceries on a neighbor's doorstep without a note, simply knowing it would help. Other times he would pay for a repair for someone who couldn't afford it, quietly and without mention. Each act was small, yet together they painted a picture of a man who cared deeply, even if no one knew why. In this apartment building, in this part of the city, life went on as usual. The streets buzzed with people. Children played, shopkeepers worked tirelessly, and neighbors greeted each other with familiar nods. And through it all, the quiet man watched, learned, and acted in ways that were invisible yet profound. He was living proof that a simple life could carry immense power, and that a kind heart, when paired with patience and observation, could change the world quietly, one small act at a time. The quiet man continued his daily routines, but behind the simplicity, there was a careful observation of everything around him. Every day, he would walk the streets, noticing small changes in his neighborhood. He saw when a shopkeeper struggled to open a store because of a broken lock, or when a child's shoes were worn out and torn. He didn't make a scene or interfere publicly. Instead, he made small notes in his worn leather notebook and thought of ways to quietly help. Sometimes he would visit the local library, pretending to browse for books while really watching how people interacted. He noticed who needed encouragement and who was quietly struggling. There was an elderly man who came every morning, reading newspapers but always looking sad. The quiet man made mental notes and planned small gestures that might lift his spirits, like leaving a fresh newspaper or a small treat without making it obvious. He was fascinated by human behavior. He noticed how people reacted to kindness, and how a small act could bring unexpected joy. It became part of his routine to watch, record, and understand. He believed that real help didn't need to be dramatic. It was the subtle, thoughtful gestures that had the deepest impact. A family might never know who paid for their groceries or repaired their leaking roof, but the quiet man knew, and that knowledge gave him satisfaction that no wealth could buy. One afternoon, he noticed a young woman struggling to carry heavy bags from the market. Her face was tired, her movements slow from exhaustion. He walked over silently and offered a hand. She looked surprised but grateful. He carried the bags a short distance to her door, saying nothing about himself or why he helped. She smiled and thanked him, and he walked away as quietly as he had arrived, disappearing back into the crowd. Moments like this reminded him why he observed life so closely. At times, he would see children playing in the streets with worn-out toys or no toys at all. On several occasions, he left small gifts or simple toys where they could be discovered without anyone knowing who had left them. He liked the idea that the children could feel joy and curiosity without connecting it to a benefactor. In his mind, true happiness was independent of recognition, and that principle guided everything he did. He also paid attention to the people running small businesses in the area. There was a tiny bakery that struggled to stay open because of debts, and a small tailor shop where the owner worked tirelessly but earned little. The quiet man never interfered in their work directly, but he made anonymous contributions to help them through tough times. Sometimes it was money. Other times it was advice or resources left in ways that didn't draw attention. He wanted the businesses to succeed on their own merit, but he also wanted to give them a subtle boost when needed. Even as he quietly helped others, he maintained the appearance of an ordinary life. His apartment remained simple and unassuming, with basic furniture and no signs of extravagance. He dressed modestly, walked the streets without a luxury car, and interacted politely but without drawing attention. The neighbors continued to assume he lived a modest life, unaware that he was quietly wealthy. This was intentional. He wanted his actions to be measured and thoughtful, not influenced by his wealth or status. His goal was genuine kindness, not showmanship. He also spent time learning about the problems people faced. He would sit in cafes or parks and listen to conversations, paying attention to stories of struggle, dreams, and setbacks. He didn't intrude or ask personal questions, but he listened with empathy. He found patterns in the difficulties people faced and thought carefully about how he could help without embarrassing anyone or changing the natural course of their lives. It became almost a science for him, observing human behavior, understanding challenges, and planning small, meaningful interventions. Occasionally, he would encounter people who were suspicious of his kindness. Some asked why he helped or why he seemed so interested in their lives. He always replied with simple, unremarkable answers, never revealing the truth. "I like to help," he would say, or "I enjoy seeing people happy." No one could guess that behind his quiet demeanor was a man with immense resources and a network capable of influencing lives far beyond the neighborhood. The quiet man found joy in observing the ripple effects of his actions. When a struggling shopkeeper found unexpected help, he would watch quietly as the business began to thrive. When a child discovered a small gift, he would notice the excitement in their eyes, even if he never spoke to them about it. These moments, seemingly insignificant to others, were treasures to him. They were proof that small, thoughtful gestures could have lasting effects. Despite his careful observation and acts of kindness, he faced moments of loneliness, living quietly, keeping his true identity hidden, and constantly watching others created a distance between him and the community. He had friends, of course, but they did not know the full extent of who he was. He sometimes wondered if people would understand his motives if they knew, or if it would change the way they saw him. Yet, he accepted that his life required secrecy for the sake of authenticity in his interactions. One rainy evening, he noticed a neighbor struggling to fix a broken window in the cold. Without hesitation, he stepped in, helping carefully and efficiently. He stayed long enough to ensure the window was secure, then left silently in the rain. The neighbor never knew his name, only that a kind stranger had helped at just the right time. These moments reinforced his belief that actions mattered far more than words or recognition. He also began to notice patterns in the people around him. Some faced repeated hardships, while others achieved success but still struggled with small daily challenges. He learned that human life was full of complexity and subtle needs, and helping required patience and thoughtfulness. He didn't rush into solutions. He considered long-term effects and aimed to support without creating dependence. His philosophy was that true help was empowering, not simply solving immediate problems. Even though he lived quietly, he occasionally interacted with the local authorities or social workers, providing information that could help people in need. He never took credit and remained anonymous. This quiet influence allowed him to extend his reach without being noticed. He carefully chose when and where to step in, ensuring that his interventions were meaningful and timely. The quiet man also kept a personal journal of his observations, ideas, and reflections. Each entry was detailed, noting the people he saw, the small acts of kindness he performed, and the results he observed. This journal became a map of his efforts and thoughts, helping him plan future actions. He reviewed it regularly, learning from each interaction, refining his approach, and deepening his understanding of human nature. Over time, his reputation among those he directly helped grew quietly. People whispered about an anonymous benefactor, a kind stranger who seemed to understand their needs. The quiet man never revealed himself, finding satisfaction in knowing that he made a positive impact without seeking recognition. It was a personal philosophy he lived by, one that emphasized humility, observation, and quiet generosity. The small apartment building and its surrounding streets became a microcosm for him, a world he could observe, understand, and influence in subtle ways. He felt a deep connection to this community, even though most people saw him as an ordinary neighbor. He had chosen this life intentionally, valuing simplicity and human connection over wealth and status. Every smile he helped create, every burden he quietly eased, became part of the story he was writing in real life. As evening fell, he would return to his apartment, reflecting on the day. He planned future actions, thinking about how he could continue to help without making himself known. Each day offered new opportunities, new people to observe, and new challenges to understand. The quiet man understood that life was full of small, significant moments, and his role was to notice them, act thoughtfully, and leave a positive impact. He knew that wealth alone could never create meaning. True satisfaction came from understanding, connection, and quiet service to others. He didn't need recognition or praise. He needed only the knowledge that his small, consistent efforts were making life a little better for those around him. This belief guided every step he took, every interaction he had, and every quiet moment he spent observing the world around him. Through these daily acts, the quiet man shaped the lives of those around him in ways they could not fully see. His presence was subtle, almost invisible, yet it carried power and compassion. He continued to walk the streets, observe the small details, and act when necessary, maintaining the delicate balance between being a part of the community and remaining a silent guardian. Life in the city continued, full of challenges and triumphs, and he remained quietly at the center of it all, watching, learning, and helping in ways that mattered most without anyone knowing who he really was. One afternoon, the quiet man noticed unusual activity in his building. Smoke was coming from the apartment across the hall. Panic spread quickly as neighbors tried to act. The fire alarms were blaring, and everyone was rushing to help, but the situation seemed chaotic. The quiet man didn't hesitate. He moved calmly, with purpose, assessing the danger and taking steps to protect those who could be at risk. He helped a young family carrying their frightened children down the stairs. They were disoriented and panicked, not knowing where to go. The quiet man guided them safely to the street, keeping them calm with a steady voice. The neighbors watching were shocked by his calmness, while others panicked. He seemed in complete control, quietly managing the crisis with care and efficiency. No one knew his background, but they were beginning to sense that there was something extraordinary about him. Once the immediate danger passed, the quiet man stayed to ensure everyone was safe. He helped the fire department by pointing out which apartments might still have people inside. His knowledge of the building and its residents made it easier for emergency responders to act quickly. Neighbors were grateful, but puzzled. They had seen him as quiet, reserved, and ordinary. Now, in this moment of crisis, they realized there was much more to him than they had ever suspected. After the fire was controlled, he took it upon himself to help the displaced family. He offered temporary housing and arranged for their essential needs to be met. They were overwhelmed with gratitude, unable to comprehend how a man who lived so simply could provide so much support. He didn't seek thanks or attention. He simply wanted to help those in need and ensure that their lives could continue with as little disruption as possible. Word spread quietly through the building about his actions. People began to realize that the quiet man was more than he seemed. There were whispers of admiration and curiosity. Neighbors started to pay closer attention, noticing the small ways he had helped them in the past. The little acts of kindness, once overlooked, now seemed like part of a bigger picture. The realization slowly emerged. This man, who lived so humbly, had resources and skills far beyond ordinary understanding. In the days following the fire, he continued his quiet routines but with a new layer of involvement. He checked on the family regularly, ensuring they had what they needed. He also began thinking about long-term ways to support the neighborhood. He noticed which buildings needed repairs, which businesses were struggling, and which families faced ongoing challenges. Each observation became part of a careful plan to provide meaningful assistance without drawing attention to himself. While helping others, he also remained invisible to the world. He didn't flaunt his wealth, nor did he expect recognition. He dressed simply, moved quietly, and spoke politely but without revealing the depth of his resources. This invisibility allowed him to observe life as it was, without the interference that fame or wealth could bring. People treated him as they would any neighbor, allowing him to understand their true lives and struggles. He found satisfaction in seeing progress and improvement. When the family displaced by the fire received a better apartment, he observed the relief on their faces from a distance, never revealing his involvement. When a shopkeeper received quiet support to repair a broken storefront, he watched his business slowly picked up, knowing that his actions had made a difference without interfering with their dignity. These moments reinforced his belief that true impact comes from subtle, thoughtful interventions. He also noticed how people interacted under stress. The fire had revealed strengths and weaknesses in the community. Some neighbors came together to help one another, while others struggled to act in the chaos. He made mental notes, thinking about how to strengthen community bonds and foster mutual support. His goal was not to control, but to create conditions where people could thrive and help each other naturally. The quiet man believed that empowering people quietly was more valuable than offering visible charity. As the neighborhood recovered, he continued to make small improvements. He fixed broken streetlights, left anonymous donations to struggling families, and supported local businesses. Each action was carefully considered, aimed at long-term benefits rather than immediate recognition. He also continued his personal reflections in his notebook, recording what worked, what didn't, and how he could continue to support the community without making himself known. Sometimes he faced skepticism. People wondered why he was always so generous, always so helpful. A few neighbors tried to engage him in conversation, asking why he did so much for others. He always replied with simplicity, "I like to help." They didn't press further, sensing there was more than words could explain. And there was. Behind the calm exterior was a man with immense resources, quietly shaping the lives of those around him with care and foresight. He also began to notice patterns in human resilience and kindness. The fire had shown him that ordinary people could rise to extraordinary challenges. Some neighbors had risked their own safety to help others. Children had acted bravely in small ways. He admired these acts and thought about how to encourage such courage and empathy in everyday life. He realized that helping people wasn't only about providing material support. It was also about fostering a sense of community and confidence in one another. Even with these responsibilities, he kept his life simple. His apartment remained modest, his routines unchanged, and his interactions polite but unobtrusive. He didn't want people to treat him differently. He wanted to see life as it truly was, unfiltered and real. This simplicity allowed him to act with clarity, without the distractions that wealth and fame could bring. He valued observation, reflection, and quiet intervention above all else. As he walked the streets after the fire, he noticed small signs of improvement. Neighbors were repairing their homes, helping one another, and smiling more often. Businesses were recovering, and children played safely in the streets again. The quiet man felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had witnessed the crisis, acted when necessary, and then allowed life to return to its natural rhythm. The impact of his actions was visible, yet he remained unseen, a silent guardian in the midst of ordinary life. He reflected on the lessons the fire had taught him. Life was unpredictable and fragile, but it also held immense strength and beauty. People could surprise you with their courage and kindness when faced with challenges. He understood that his role was not to control or dominate, but to support, empower, and quietly influence positive outcomes. This philosophy guided every action he took, ensuring that his interventions were meaningful, respectful, and effective. Through these experiences, he became more connected to his community. He understood their struggles, celebrated their successes, and provided support when needed. Yet, he maintained his anonymity, knowing that his influence was most powerful when it was invisible. People were free to live, grow, and thrive without feeling indebted or constrained by his presence. This balance between involvement and invisibility was delicate, but essential. Even after the immediate crisis passed, he continued to observe, learn, and act. He noticed small opportunities to help. A neighbor struggling with groceries, a child needing school supplies, a store requiring repairs. Each act was done quietly, without fanfare, but with intention and care. He recorded his observations, reflected on outcomes, and refined his approach, always seeking to improve his impact without drawing attention. The quiet man's reputation in the neighborhood grew subtly. People began to speak of the kind, helpful neighbor who seemed to appear at the right time. Some were curious, others grateful, but few understood the full extent of his resources and abilities. He did not correct assumptions or reveal the truth. He allowed the stories to grow quietly, letting people appreciate the acts themselves rather than the man behind them. This approach reinforced his belief that humility and discretion were as important as generosity. Through all of this, he continued to live a life of observation and reflection. He remained attentive to human behavior, empathetic to struggles, and thoughtful in his interventions. Every action, no matter how small, was part of a larger plan to support, protect, and empower those around him. He valued the small moments of joy and relief that his actions created, knowing that these were the real markers of success, far more meaningful than public recognition or material wealth. He also found a sense of fulfillment in the continuity of life. The neighborhood, the people, the small routines, all of it formed a living tapestry that he could observe and influence in subtle ways. He understood that real impact was slow, quiet, and consistent. It was not about dramatic gestures or public accolades, but about the steady, thoughtful support that allowed people to thrive. This belief shaped his every decision and action, guiding him as he moved through the world. As evening came, he returned to his modest apartment, reflecting on the day's events. He thought about the fire, the people he had helped, and the lessons he had learned. He planned to the future, considering ways to continue his quiet interventions and support the community without revealing his true identity. The neighborhood had changed slightly because of him, and he felt a quiet pride in knowing that his presence, though invisible, had made life better for many people. Through all the challenges and quiet victories, he remained consistent in his approach. He valued simplicity, observation, empathy, and discreet action. The fire had been a turning point, revealing both the fragility and strength of human life. It had given him an opportunity to act decisively and effectively, reinforcing his belief that meaningful help could be given without recognition. He would continue to live quietly, act thoughtfully, and observe deeply, shaping the lives of those around him in ways that mattered most without ever being seen. After the fire, the quiet man continued his life with his usual calm, but his actions became more purposeful. He began noticing patterns in the neighborhood. Some families struggled financially, while others seemed to be surviving but were missing opportunities for improvement. He kept track of who needed help and thought of ways to support them quietly, without making anyone feel embarrassed or dependent. He would sometimes leave small envelopes of money in mailboxes or on doorsteps. They were always anonymous, with no signature or explanation. Yet, the impact was real. A family struggling to pay rent could keep their home. A child could buy a needed school supply. A small shop could repair broken equipment and continue to serve the community. These quiet gestures spread hope and relief, even though no one knew who was behind them. He also focused on empowering people rather than just giving money. He would offer advice to struggling shopkeepers, helping to manage their business more effectively. He quietly connected them with resources or suppliers without revealing his own identity. The shopkeepers often noticed improvements, but never knew who had made it possible. His goal was not to control their lives, but to guide them so they could succeed on their own. The quiet man continued to observe the children in the neighborhood. He noticed who needed encouragement and who had talent but lacked opportunities. He would leave books, toys, or education materials where they could find them, sparking curiosity and learning. Sometimes he would anonymously sponsor lessons or classes for children with potential. He never took credit, but he found joy in watching them grow and develop skills that could change their future. Neighbors began to talk about the mysterious stranger who helped in unexpected ways. Some were curious, others grateful, but none could fully understand the scope of his influence. The quiet man preferred it that way. He wanted people to feel the effects of his help, not to know the person behind it. In his mind, recognition could complicate things and take away the authenticity of the assistance. He also noticed elderly residents who struggled with daily tasks. He would quietly assist them with grocery shopping, home repairs, or transportation. Often, he left small improvements around their homes, like fixing a leaking faucet or tightening loose door handles. These acts were small, almost invisible, yet they made life much easier for those who could not do it themselves. The quiet man found satisfaction in these small victories, knowing that he was making life better in subtle ways. While he acted in the neighborhood, he also remained careful about his own life. His apartment stayed simple, his routines remained consistent, and he avoided any displays of wealth. He moved quietly through the streets, observing without drawing attention. This discretion allowed him to maintain an authentic connection with people, to see them as they truly were, and to intervene thoughtfully without altering their natural behavior. Over time, he became aware of broader challenges in the community. There were families struggling with medical bills, children unable to attend school due to costs, and small businesses facing bankruptcy. He began to think of ways to address these issues without making his actions public. He understood that long-term impact required strategy and subtlety, not just immediate solutions. He planned carefully, balancing assistance with anonymity, ensuring that his help would empower rather than create dependency. He also observed social interactions, noticing how people treated one another and how kindness or cruelty affected daily life. He saw the ways in which empathy and understanding could strengthen relationships and community bonds. At the same time, he noticed where conflict and misunderstanding cause harm. He reflected on these observations, thinking of ways to subtly influence positive behavior, often through quiet guidance or indirect support. One day, he discovered a small, struggling bakery on the corner of the street. The owner was tired and disheartened, unsure if the business could continue. The quiet man left small but meaningful supplies, ingredients, tools, and even a few tips on improving sales. He also quietly provided financial support to cover unexpected expenses. Over time, the bakery began to flourish, and the owner never knew the identity of the benefactor. The quiet man was satisfied, knowing he had helped someone succeed without taking credit or recognition. He also watched families who struggled to pay for children's education. He arranged for scholarships and tuition support, always anonymous, allowing children to attend school without worry. These gestures often went unnoticed publicly, but he knew their impact. Children were able to continue their studies, pursue dreams, and grow with confidence. He valued these moments deeply, seeing them as seeds planted quietly for the future. In addition to supporting individuals, he observed the overall community dynamics. He noticed patterns of generosity, kindness, and resilience, as well as struggles and weaknesses. He used these insights to plan subtle interventions, ensuring that help reached those who needed it most. He believed that true community support involved nurturing potential, fostering strength, and creating opportunities for growth, all without making anyone feel indebted or embarrassed. Neighbors occasionally speculated about the mysterious stranger who seemed to be everywhere, quietly helping. Some wondered why he was so generous. Others simply appreciated the acts. The quiet man never revealed his motives, maintaining the balance between presence and invisibility. He understood that his actions mattered more than recognition, and he found contentment in knowing that his help made a real difference. Even as he helped others, he continued to learn from them. He observed courage, creativity, and resilience in people facing challenges. He noticed the ways individuals adapted, supported one another, and persevered through hardship. These observations informed his future actions, allowing him to provide thoughtful, impactful support. He understood that real help involved both understanding people's needs and respecting their dignity. He also paid attention to how people responded to acts of kindness. He noticed that small gestures often inspired more kindness, creating a ripple effect through the community. This insight reinforced his approach of quiet, subtle assistance. He didn't need to be seen. The results were enough. Watching others grow stronger, happier, and more resilient was reward enough for him. As the quiet man moved through the streets, he maintained a careful balance between observation, intervention, and discretion. He assisted when needed, guided quietly, and left a positive impact without altering the natural rhythm of life. He valued simplicity, authenticity, and humility, believing that true influence came from subtle, consistent efforts rather than grand gestures or public recognition. His presence in the community became a quiet force for good. He provided resources, guidance, and support without expectation of reward. He observed life closely, learned from people's experiences, and acted thoughtfully to help them thrive. His quiet interventions fostered resilience, hope, and growth, creating lasting positive change in ways that were almost invisible to those around him. Even in his personal life, he maintained simplicity. He lived modestly, ate simply, and spent time reflecting on his observations. He recorded thoughts, ideas, and outcomes in his notebook, analyzing what worked and how to improve future actions. This careful documentation allowed him to refine his approach, ensuring that his efforts were thoughtful, meaningful, and sustainable. Through all of this, he remained deeply human. He felt empathy, joy, and concern for those around him. He understood struggles, celebrated successes, and acted with compassion. His wealth and resources were tools, not motivations. The true measure of his life was a positive impact he quietly created in the lives of others, not the material possessions he could acquire. In the evenings, he would often sit by his window, looking at the neighborhood with quiet satisfaction. He saw families thriving, children learning, and businesses improving. He felt a sense of purpose and connection, knowing that his actions had helped shape these outcomes. Yet, He remained unseen, a silent observer and supporter of life around him. The quiet man understood that real change required patience and persistence. He didn't act impulsively or seek immediate results. He observed, planned, and acted thoughtfully, ensuring that every intervention had a meaningful impact. He believed that true kindness involved discretion, empathy, and respect for others' dignity. These principles guided every decision he made, both in helping others and in living his own life. As months passed, the quiet man's influence spread subtly through the neighborhood. People felt supported, encouraged, and empowered, even if they didn't know the source. The small act of kindness created a stronger, more connected community. The quiet man found joy in this invisible impact, knowing that his efforts were making life better in ways that would endure beyond any recognition or praise. Through all these experiences, he remained committed to his principles: observation, empathy, subtle action, and humility. He continued to live simply, act quietly, and support others in meaningful ways. The quiet man's life was a testament to the power of thoughtful, invisible kindness and the profound impact one person could have when acting with care, discretion, and understanding. As the quiet man moved through his neighborhood each day, he continued to observe, reflect, and act with care. He had become an unseen presence that shaped the lives of those around him. Families thrived quietly with his support, small businesses regained stability, and children discovered opportunities they might never have had otherwise. Yet, he remained invisible, never seeking recognition, never asking for thanks. This quiet influence gave him a sense of fulfillment that no wealth or public admiration could ever provide. One morning, he noticed a young boy sitting alone in the park. The boy's clothes were worn, and he looked sad and withdrawn. The quiet man approached slowly, speaking gently, asking questions without pressure. He learned that the boy's family was struggling, and that he felt isolated from his friends at school. Without making a scene, the quiet man arranged for new books and school supplies to be delivered anonymously. Over the following weeks, the boy gained confidence, made friends, and began to smile more often. The quiet man observed from a distance, content to see the small transformation without interfering or claiming credit. He also continued to support the elderly residents in subtle ways. He noticed a woman who had difficulty maintaining her apartment. He quietly repaired leaky faucets, replaced broken light bulbs, and left small notes of encouragement. She never knew who was helping her, but she felt supported and cared for. The quiet man understood that these small gestures could have a big emotional impact, making life more comfortable and less stressful for those who were vulnerable. As the seasons changed, he also noticed the neighborhood itself improving. Streets were cleaner, parks were better maintained, and local businesses flourished. Some residents attributed these changes to community effort, while others whispered about a mysterious benefactor. The quiet man did not correct any assumptions. He knew that his influence was strongest when it remained unseen, allowing community to grow naturally and authentically. He occasionally interacted with neighbors, offering advice or guidance when it seemed appropriate. Yet, even in these moments, he was careful not to reveal too much. He listened more than he spoke, learned from their experiences, and used the knowledge to plan thoughtful interventions. He valued understanding people deeply before offering help, knowing that genuine support required empathy, patience, and discretion. Over time, he noticed the cumulative impact of his actions. Children who had received books or lessons excelled in school. Families who had received quiet financial support regained stability. Local businesses that had been struggling began to thrive. The community as a whole seemed stronger, more resilient, and more connected. He felt a quiet pride, knowing that his efforts were making a lasting difference without the need for recognition. The quiet man also reflected on the lessons he had learned from observing human behavior. He realized that small acts of kindness often had ripple effects far beyond their initial intention. One act could inspire another, creating a chain of generosity and care. He continued to practice his philosophy, using his resources and insight to create opportunities for positive change without seeking attention or approval. He noticed that his presence, though mostly invisible, had become a source of hope for some. Families who had been helped quietly began to act with greater confidence. Children who had received support were more engaged and eager to learn. Business owners who had been given discreet assistance were more motivated and optimistic. The quiet man understood that empowerment was more valuable than simple aid, and he continued to focus on creating conditions for lasting growth. In addition to his work in the neighborhood, he also reflected on his own life. He continued to live simply, maintaining his routines and keeping his apartment modest. He valued solitude, reflection, and the opportunity to observe life as it unfolded. His wealth, though vast, was a tool for meaningful action rather than a source of status or pleasure. He measured success not by what he owned, but by the lives he quietly improved. One evening, he walked through the streets after sunset, observing the community he had come to care for deeply. He saw neighbors chatting, children playing safely, and shopkeepers closing for the night with satisfaction. He felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that his presence, though unseen, had helped create this sense of stability and joy. Yet he remained humble, understanding that his role was to support, not to dominate or control. He also continued to document his thoughts, observations, and reflections. His notebook was filled with careful notes on human behavior, successful interventions, and ideas for future assistance. This journal was a tool for learning, planning, and improving his impact. It allowed him to see patterns, anticipate needs, and refine his approach to quietly supporting others. The act of recording and reflecting became an integral part of his work, ensuring that each action was thoughtful and intentional. Neighbors occasionally speculated about the mysterious stranger who seemed to quietly influence so many aspects of the community. Some wondered about his motivations. Others expressed gratitude for the unseen support. The quiet man never revealed himself, understanding that the magic of his actions lay in their anonymity. He valued humility and discretion, believing that true impact came from thoughtful action rather than recognition. Over time, the quiet man's interventions began to inspire others. People who had been helped quietly started paying it forward in their own ways. Neighbors assisted one another. Children shared resources, and local businesses supported community events. These ripple effects reinforce the philosophy that true change comes from empowering others and nurturing kindness, not from seeking attention or reward. Despite his extensive impact, he remained grounded. He continued to live quietly, observe carefully, and act thoughtfully. Each day offered new opportunities to make a difference, and he embraced them with patience and empathy. He understood that lasting change required consistency, subtlety, and respect for the dignity of those he helped. As the years passed, the quiet man became a silent pillar of the neighborhood. Families grew stronger, children thrived, and businesses flourished. The community became more connected, resilient, and supportive. He observed these changes with quiet satisfaction, knowing that his consistent, thoughtful actions had contributed to this positive transformation. Yet he never sought acknowledgement, allowing the community to grow organically and authentically. In his reflections, he recognized that the most meaningful aspects of life were often invisible to others. True impact was not measured by wealth, fame, or recognition, but by the difference one could make quietly, consistently, and thoughtfully. He found joy in observing life, understanding human struggles, and providing support in ways that respected others' dignity and independence. Even as he aged, the quiet man continued his work. He remained attentive to the needs of the community, ready to step in when necessary, and always mindful of the importance of subtlety and discretion. His life became a testament to the power of quiet generosity, thoughtful observation, and human connection. He demonstrated that one person, acting with empathy and care, could create lasting positive change without seeking attention or reward. In the end, the quiet man's legacy was felt throughout the community, though few knew his true identity. Families he had helped thrived, children he had supported grew confident and capable, and local businesses flourished. The neighborhood became a stronger, more connected, and compassionate place. His influence was quiet, subtle, and powerful, leaving a lasting mark on the lives of those around him. He understood that life was not about recognition or wealth, but about meaningful connections, thoughtful actions, and positive influence. His quiet presence, steady support, and subtle interventions had created a lasting impact that would continue long after his own presence became unseen. The quiet man remained a guardian of the community, a source of hope, and a symbol of the power of empathy, humility, and generosity. And so, he continued, living simply, observing closely, and helping quietly. The neighborhood thrived, lives were changed, and the world, in small but meaningful ways, became a better place. The quiet man's story was not one of fame or fortune, but of human connection, kindness, and the enduring power of quiet, thoughtful action. Through his life, he showed that even one person acting with care and humility could make the world a brighter, more compassionate place for everyone around them.